Hey guys, hope you're having a fantastic day today. Today we're going to be tackling some of the tough questions when it comes to minimalism, like how to approach handling non-minimalist friends and family members who you live with. How do you strike that balance? We're also going to be talking about how to explain minimalism to your friends and family members who might not understand the journey that you're going through. We're going to handle those questions and a lot of others in this Q&A today, and I'm super excited to get into it. But before we do, hi, if we don't know each other yet, my name is Ashlynne, and I make videos twice a week on this channel about minimalism and intentional living. So if you haven't subscribed, definitely consider hitting that red subscribe button below if that sounds interesting to you. And let's go ahead and get started with this minimalism Q&A. So this first question comes from Platypus Lynn, and it's one of the hardest questions when it comes to minimalism. And it's about striking that balance of if you share a room or a house with a messy friend, family member, roommate, partner, etc., how do you handle that situation of one of you is a minimalist and the other isn't? I think this is a question that's particularly hard for us as minimalists because sometimes other people's stuff can even stress us out if we're living in the same environment as it. In terms of approaching this situation though, I think that one of the biggest things we need to start off with is having a respect for the other person and for their desire to have more things than we do. Now, in terms of what you physically can do, I think that you can start off by remembering that there are some items that are physically within your control. Your clothing, your books, your movies. There are certain items that are specifically under your control, and those items you can feel free to declutter as you want to. Now, when it comes to the other person's items, never declutter somebody's items for them without their permission. I think that's really important. It's a basic level of respecting a person. You really shouldn't be decluttering their items for them. But then there is this weird in-between where there's some items in most relationships that are shared, whether that's two partners sharing some of the kitchen items together or anything else. And in those situations, I think that it's important that you make sure you explain your values and why you're wanting to have the amount of things that you're wanting to that partner, and see if you can strike a balance between the two of you and your desires. By kind of working with each other in this way, by having mutual respect for each other in this way, I think that it's a great way to be able to approach that situation of one person is minimalist and the other isn't. And at the end of the day, if you end up having a few extra items in order to preserve your relationship with another person, I think that's perfectly okay, because if you really boil minimalism down to its very core, it's about valuing people and experiences more than things. And if you end up having a few more things because you value a person in your life, that's perfectly okay. So it's all about striking a balance while respecting another person and controlling what you have the ability to control. That's really the best advice I can give in that scenario. Another difficult and related question to this comes from Madeline May, who asks, how do you explain to your family your values and is inspiring/transitionally minimalist? And then how do you do this, especially when it comes to holidays and gift-giving traditions? So in terms of the first part of that question, how do you explain your minimalist values to a friend or family member? What it really comes down to is you need to explain the big picture to them before you explain the details of what you're actually doing. If you share the fact that you're decluttering to your friends and family members without sharing the why behind it, there's going to be a kind of disconnect as they're not really sure of what is going on. So you want to start off with the big picture, that you've been valuing experiences over things a lot more lately, that you've been wanting to get more time, peace, freedom, all of those different aspects that you've, explain why you're adopting minimalism. Go big picture and really what the value of it is for you. And then you can say, and in order to do that, I've been decluttering my things, I've freed up my schedule, I've gone through and really just minimalized a lot of the aspects of my life so that I don't have decision fatigue, so I don't have to spend as much time cleaning. Whatever those reasons, whatever those benefits are for you, and wherever you've been decluttering, just start off with that big picture idea and then work towards the more practical, so I've been decluttering my life. And then specifically as this relates to holidays and especially gift-giving seasons, I think that it's really important to begin with like rehashing all of that, give the big picture, give the specifics that you've been trying to declutter, and then give your goal for the Christmas season or the birthday season or whatever gift-giving holiday you happen to be trying to account for. And so I think that specifically after you've explained all of that, you can say, and because I've been decluttering, because I've been trying to simplify my life, I'm not really interested in physical gifts this year. What I would love instead is an experience-based gift. There's this great trip I've been wanting to go on, or this concert I'd love to see. So what you want to do in this situation is you explain that you don't want physical gifts, or if you're okay with a few physical gifts, give them a list. And then at the same time, give them an alternative of, hey, if I don't want physical gifts, what can I give you instead? Because a lot of people value being able to give gifts as a way to show appreciation. So give them an alternative of a non-physical gift item that they can give you, whether that be part of a trip or an experience, a concert, whatever that is. Figure out if there's something non-physical that they can give you as an alternative. Okay, this next question comes from Adriana Hernandez, and she asks, what do you do to help motivate yourself to declutter? Finding that drive to declutter at times can be a challenge. I think that one of the best ways to find the motivation to declutter is to watch some videos on YouTube of people decluttering. That's what I did when I was first getting started with my decluttering journey, was I would just kind of declutter alongside some of the awesome YouTubers on here who shared their decluttering journeys. I think that it's a great way to motivate you, and it's really inspiring to have someone who feels like it's going along with you in that process. And if videos aren't really doing it for you, try finding a friend who you can go ahead and ask them to spend some time decluttering with you. During that time, you can talk, socialize, and have a great time while decluttering your life. And I find that having that person-to-person motivation, whether that's through a video or in person, is definitely motivating to declutter. And it also makes it so that you have a lot more of an enjoyable time as you're going through the process. Jane Doe asks another question that I very frequently see, and it's, how can someone maintain a minimalist lifestyle if they have kids? Kids have a lot of toys and everything will mess up your minimalist home. And I think this is something that a lot of people think in their heads, oh, if I have kids, whenever that happens, I'm just gonna have to throw minimalism out the window because kids make messes. And while there's definitely some truth to this, if you have kids, there will be toys that you wouldn't have around if you did not have kids. I think that it's important to remember that there are plenty of different minimalists families out there who have kids who are able to have toys for their kids in an intentional amount that they actually use. I don't think that minimalism precludes you from having kids, or that kids preclude you from having minimalism. It's really just about finding a way to make it so that it works for everyone in that relationship. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having your kids use a fewer amount of toys that they love than having tons that they barely use. I think that that's a really intentional way to approach parenting, and I think it gives children a real ability to value what they actually use and not to kind of get caught up in things that they won't. That's something that might not connect with them fully at a younger age, but by teaching them those principles at a young age, you can definitely instill that in them as they're growing up. And I think that that's a great legacy to leave for your kid. Okay, 3 T's in a Pod asks this next question, and she asks, do you take time letting certain items go? For example, as you declutter and you see an item you know you're almost ready to let go of, but not quite yet. Sometimes it takes me a few rounds of decluttering before I'm ready. And this definitely was true of me, especially when I was first beginning my minimalism journey. For example, when I first started decluttering for the first time, I had over 30 pairs of shoes, and I gently whittled that away. The first time I decluttered, I think I ended up with around 19. The next time I went through them, I think I was down to 11, and now I'm at 7 pairs of shoes, and I'm pretty confident with that particular number at this point. But I think that this is a really great point. As you're beginning your minimalism journey, don't feel the need to really have that perfectly minimal space right off the bat. Decluttering is something that takes time, and I think that figuring out what really adds value to your life is a skill that takes time to hone. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time before you're really able to recognize exactly how much something adds value to your life. And if that's the situation you're at, then that's totally fine. Declutter what you're ready to declutter, and just be willing to routinely ask yourself, does this item add value to your life? By having that mindset of I can continually declutter instead of this is something I do once and never do again, I think that's a much more healthy way to approach figuring out what adds value to your life and what you should keep. This next question comes from Misty Dupe, and I think it's an important one because it's all about our hobbies as minimalists. And she asks, what hobbies would you suggest for a minimalist? I enjoy crafts, but I'm starting to feel some guilt associated with the money spent and stuff accumulated. Now here's my thought on this. I I have absolutely no wrong with artistic, crafty hobbies or anything that involves things in order to do. I don't think you just need to have a completely digital hobby because you're a minimalist. I think what's really important is that you figure out, as relates to your hobby, what actually adds value to your life. What do you actually use of those? You can apply this to a lot of different hobbies, whether that's painting, whether that's photography with the amount of photography paraphernalia that you have, whether it's a sport. There are so many different activities that we do where we only use a small percentage of what we actually own as relates to the hobby. So figure out what is that small amount of things that you use all the time that are related to your hobby that you can keep and practice your hobby with those rather than the rest. And with the rest of those items, figure out if there's a local club or anything like that that you can donate the items to. That being said, I'm all for having fun artistic hobbies. I'm all about some creativity myself. And so I'm not going to say don't have those hobbies. It's just figure out what you actually use as relates to those hobbies and keep those items, and you can declutter the rest. Okay, let's do one or two more questions here. Jennifer Stazel asks, how do you motivate someone who says, I could never even start? I hear that a lot. I think that the concept of minimalism and decluttering can be really overwhelming for people, especially if you've got a lot of stuff to start off with. But I think that it's really important, if you're wanting to share the freedom and joy that comes with decluttering to people, is to really just be able to start off small and work your way up from there. You don't need to declutter your entire house in one go. That would be completely overwhelming. And so if you have people who are feeling overwhelmed and not sure where to start, or feeling too overwhelmed to start, encourage them to start small. There are a couple of different strategies you can use in this area. One of them would be to play something like the 30-day minimalism game, where over the course of about 30 days you can declutter 500 items. I think that's a great way to start because it's a great way of getting the ball rolling. But if that's not exactly something that they're interested in, maybe it's too hard to keep track of those items, or they can't declutter items every single day, an alternative to this would really just be to encourage them to declutter a small area every single day, or however often they want to. This is how I personally started off decluttering, and it was really simple. One day I would begin by decluttering my purse, the next maybe my car, the following day perhaps it was my skincare or makeup. And by breaking it down into those small sections, you're able to get a huge win up front of saying, hey, I've got a purse now that I can actually find things in. And by starting off with smaller areas that are easier to declutter and working your way to bigger ones, it helps you to gain momentum so that as you see the benefits of decluttering in one area, you feel inspired and motivated to go and declutter other areas of your life. So I think either of the strategies is a fantastic way to get started, and the really big benefit of both is that it allows people to have small wins that make it so that it's not overwhelming to get started. By taking it in little bite-sized chunks, it becomes a lot easier to declutter your entire space. Okay, this last question comes from Gabrielle Little, and she asks, I feel like I keep getting rid of stuff, but there's always so much more that I think I need or that I will need in the future. How do I get around this? I think it's so important when you're decluttering to really keep in mind, what do I love and what do I use? If you haven't used it in the past month, 6 months, year, chances are you're never actually going to need it. So this might be difficult to kind of wrap your mind around, but the way I approach this thought is using something called the 20/20 rule, where essentially I say, if I declutter this item and I decide that I need it in some case in the future, the question I ask myself is, if I can buy this item in less than 20 minutes for less than $20, if I can replace that item in that time and for that amount, then I'm going to go ahead and declutter it. Because for me, it physically being in my space isn't worth the time, mental energy, whatever that is involved in keeping it up, caring for it, and it just occupying presence in my space. A lot of times those items that we might hypothetically use in the future never actually get used, and so it's not really worth keeping them around in our lives. Okay guys, well those are all the questions that I have time for today. Thank you to all of you who asked some amazing questions about handling minimalism with your relationships with others, introducing others to minimalism, which I think is a fantastic idea, and so many others. Thank you all. If you had a question that I didn't get the chance to answer, go ahead and leave that in the description box below and I'll try to get back to you on that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a like, a thumbs up, and let me know that you enjoyed this video. Also, go ahead and subscribe today if you haven't already. I would totally appreciate it. I love you guys all so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.